TCI is brought to you by Escandarea, the most dominant 3-year-old this decade. Seeing is believing at eskyonthego.com.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Breeders' Cup. I'm John Siegel alongside Joel Cunningham, Ed DeRosa, and our special guest, Elliott Walden. Thank you for having us out here at WinStar. We have a lot of races to talk about, guys, a lot of quality racing this weekend. I'm going to start off with the Ballerina Stakes on Friday. Just ask you guys an easy question. Who do you like in this race? Elliott, you first.
I like Turbulent Descent. You know, Todd's 30% off a trainer change. She's been training well at Saratoga. I think she's the winner.
Yeah, she's certainly the most likely winner, and the only one I could see upsetting her would be Nicole H. So Turbulent Ascent in the female sprint division, maybe Nicole H for an upset chance.
Yeah, I think Nicole H would have a shot maybe at 6 furlongs, 7 furlongs, and the fact that Turbulent Descent clearly likes that track, that's really the only obstacle I can see. Now, it's tricky. If she were to run in there, I think she could give her a problem at that distance, but she's pointing for Sunday's personal ensign instead. I'll be interested to see, guys, how the race, Friday compares to the test on Saturday. See how contested runs as compared to the results in the Ballerina.
All right, guys. Well, you mentioned it's tricky. You said she's going to opt for the personal ensign. Let's talk about this. Can she earn a berth in the Breeders' Cup over Royal Delta? Ed, you first.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we saw It's Tricky last year put together some great races. She fell short against Plum Pretty in the Cotillion, but she did beat Royal Delta in the prep for the Alabama, which was a grade 1 prep. So to me, she's certainly live. I think Royal Delta is the more likely of the winners, but It's Tricky I don't think would shock anyone.
You know, Royal Delta's been training well since the Delaware race, and I've seen it in my own experience and then also with other horses. Delaware can be a funny track. So when you run a little flat, you don't run quite as well as you have on your form, throw it out, she's still, go back to that Churchill form.
Too, so.
Yeah, and she carried a lot of weight that day. I think Royal Delta gets home.
I agree. I was surprised at how sharp she was early in that race at Delaware. I mean, I know they were going a little further amount a quarter, but she was a lot sharper than we've seen her in a lot of her races. She usually likes to make that one run from out of it. So I thought she made the lead maybe a little early in there, and Tismiss Sue gave her everything she wanted. But I agree. I think, in this race, she's definitely the one to beat. I do think It's Tricky as a tactical advantage. It'll be interesting to see if It's Tricky gets the jump. Can Royal Delta reel her in?
All right, let's move now to the King's Bishop. We see Currency Swap in here against Triniberg. He's on a TCI top 5. Do you think Triniberg gets it done, Joel?
I do. I think Calder's kind of a funny track. Elliott talked about Delaware Park. Calder's definitely a horse for course kind of track. I definitely think Triniberg gets back on track here, especially at that 7 furlong distance. He should run them off their feet.
What about Currency Swap at Saratoga?
He's certainly undefeated there, and he comes in off the Amsterdam win. But I do think Triniberg clearly showed, on the Woody Stevens, that he's a faster sprinter than Currency Swap. So I do like Triniberg.
Is Woody Stevens at Saratoga?
It's not at Saratoga. No, it's not. But you're also you're making the assumption that Triniberg's not going to fire at Saratoga like he has everywhere. I mean, the horse is essentially fired everywhere he's run. I don't find the track being an
including Saratoga. I mean,
yeah. Now Triniberg's a great horse, and he's been a fun horse to watch all year. So, I think he'll give him a tough battle. I was just giving you a hard time.
So, do you think Triniberg will win?
I do.
Okay, Ed, what do you think?
As do I. Hope we have more varied opinions in the Travers, because we've agreed quite a bit. But his consistency is what's impressed me. It's just race after race, whether he's 60-1 or the favorite, he fires his shot, and I think he will on Saturday as well.
All right, let's move on to the Travers. This race is very similar to Jim Dandy in that there's no real quality speed up front. Do you see a horse grabbing maybe a tactical advantage in winning this race?
I love horses that run well over courses, and Alpha's broke his maiden extremely impressively last year. He came back, followed it up with the Jim Dandy. I don't see him getting beat. He's training great.
Ed, do you agree with that?
I disagree. I'm going with an angle. You like the horse for course angle. This spring I used the West Coast angle for 3-year-olds, and I think it applies here. I'm going with LIAISON or NONIOS. I just think the West Coast horses have been best, and granted, these two clearly weren't up to the Bodemeister or I'll have another level earlier this spring, but they are coming from the West Coast, which dominated the Triple Crown this year, and I'm going to try to ride that wave again.
Well, NONIOS is a very interesting horse. He's the fastest horse coming out of the better race, the Haskell. I think Painter would lay over this field, but, he's shipped around a lot to California. It's getting a new rider. It's very interesting to see, if he can continue that momentum and get better, or if he's ready to take maybe a step backwards. The horse I like in here is Neck and Neck. I think going 1.25 miles, being by Flower Alley, who obviously won the Travers, I think he's going to appreciate the distance. And I do think he ran a great race last time out, but was, sort of up against it. Sure. The fact that he didn't get the pace, and Alpha was allowed to, they went 49 and,
the numbers guy
was a half length off at the 8th pole.
He was a half length off.
2 lengths back at the wire.
That's
and
true, but he had to make up
to
the ground to be able to get up the collar, and he still finished nicely. No, I agree with you. In 1.25 miles, Elliott, Alpha is a deserving favorite because he's going to get the distance.
Yeah. Let's move to the West Coast. Ed, you mentioned it. Let's talk about the Pacific Classic. We see a 3-year-old coming in here in Dullahan. Does he or anyone else have a chance to defeat Game On Dude right now, JC?
Dullahan is a very interesting horse because he's a multiple Grade 1 winner over the poly track and certainly likes that 1.25 mile distance. His recent form isn't that good, but I think it's clear the horse probably isn't a dirt horse at this point. Churchill Downs is an interesting dirt track. It can take a turf horse and make him look pretty good on the dirt, and we've seen that in the past. In this race, I don't like Game On Dude. I don't even think Baffert likes him on the poly track. I think this is an interesting race, and I think it's between Richard's Kid, interestingly enough, recently sold by Baffert. Right. I don't understand that angle so much, a horse that's coming in this race live. The money must have been right, but I think it's between Richard's Kid and, maybe Dullahan and some others in here. Very interesting race.
You look at Richard's Kid having to move barns just 5 days before the race. I think it's extremely unsettling.
And to a barn that's trainer was moving out, so it's sort of a double switch.
Double switch. So I think you just put a line through it.
What?
And even though Baffert loved him, and I know that going into the race, he felt like he was as good a chance to win it as Game On Dude, like you said.
I think that's why Baffert was frustrated, is I think he feels like he got this horse ready, and now they just basically gave him the key. So if it's that turn key, I'm not as worried about the change. It is a concern. We haven't mentioned the filly Amani, who I thought ran very well in defeat. First North American start. She's going to get a weight break. If she's closer to the pace, which I assume Game On Dude will be help setting, I think she could be running late. I'm excited to see her and Dullahan duke it out in the final 8th.
So and is there anybody hotter? Sorry, John, but is there anybody hotter than Dale Romans right now?
Right. So do you like Dullahan?
I like Dullahan.
Wow.
I think that Game On Dude is vulnerable at 1.25 miles on the poly track, and speed doesn't quite do as well, and I think Dullahan will pick up the pieces.
It'll be an interesting weekend for sure when it comes to races. Well, guys, it's time to tackle the topics. And Elliott, we got you here because there's been several top 3-year-olds that have retired as of late in just the last few weeks. Obviously, Bodemeister is one of those horses. He's here on the farm. Wanted to give you a minute to kind of talk about Bodemeister, maybe explain the injury a little bit, and just explain the thought pattern of retiring Bodemeister.
Well, the retirement was a very difficult thing because, with the injury that he had, and we laid it all out for everybody to see. It's a nerve muscle injury in his infraspinatus muscle. I can't even say it well, but in his left shoulder, and he started to get some atrophy, some hollowing out of that shoulder. When you jog him to the left, he wants to stumble a little bit, and that's why we got him back here to Rood and Riddle. Dr. Bramlett did a lot of work with him and diagnosed it. But he could come back at 4. And it was a difficult decision about retiring him. But at the end of the day, it's important for these horses to go to stud at the right time. Do fans want to hear that? Probably not. But fans want a WinStar Farm around, and they want a Zayat Stables around to be able to produce the good horses. What we hope that happens at WinStar is that people will identify with WinStar, and that's why we started the stablemates. So that, unfortunately, horses get hurt. NFL football players get hurt. Major League Baseball players get hurt. But when that happens, hopefully we've got another star in the making that we can come pick up the pieces with.
Right. I mean, I think it's understandable that fans are upset about they're disappointed is more the word. Yeah. And, I think you helped explain, like Union Rags, it was a similar situation where they said, he probably could have come back at 4. Same thing with Bodemeister, but you say there's a thought pattern to why that they're not.
Nobody loves to talk about, the financial side of this business, but we need to keep WinStar Farm a viable operation for the 130 families we feed, for the fans. They need people that want to invest in this game. It's not like he's coming to the farm so that we can make tons of money.
Right.
He's coming to the farm to help keep it financially viable and to give Bodemeister the best chance at stud. And who knows, you know, the injury he had, nobody's dealt with that before. So, you know, would he have come back from that? It's hard to say.
I think the big topic this brings up for me as a fan is the chatter about, oh, racing needs stars and Bodemeister being out hurts the game. And I disagree with that. I agree with Elliott's approach that you need a rotation. You need good horses running for sure, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a Bodemeister or Union Rags next year. I look at Royal Delta, who was champion last year, looked invincible in the Breeders' Cup. People were really excited she was coming back at 4, sold for big money, grabbed a lot of eyes. But when I think about what she's done this year, it would be hard to argue that she's moved the needle. I don't think her presence in the personal ensign is going to increase attendance or increase wagering. It's exciting to see her run, and people want stars that are active. But I agree with Elliott that as long as these owners are reinvesting and putting new stars on the track, that's what fans respond to.
And WinStar wanted to see Bodemeister continue the year and leading up to the Breeders' Cup. I mean, the horse had his future in front of him. Trust me. You wanted to see this horse win the Haskell, Travers, and Breeders' Cup Classic. It's not like when you purchased him in July, you were looking to retire the horse.
No, not at all. And, you know, that's the preposterous thing about it. I've read it this week that we, you know, ever since the Stallion deal was inked, well, we wanted him in the Stallion barn. Well, we wanted him in the Stallion barn probably at the end of his 3-year-old year. But there's nothing better than to have a horse win the Breeders' Cup Mile or the Breeders' Cup Classic right at the end and then bring him to breeders. The thing about whether he could run early next year, you're making a decision for the whole breeding season. Right. So even if he could start back in training in, say, November and get ready by January, February, you can't bring him to the breeding shed at that time. You're committing to the whole year. And you know, again, we don't know exactly what about this injury would be able to, whether he'd be able to come back or not.
Well, Elliott, I appreciate you coming on, and I know it's a difficult topic to talk about with the retirement of Bodemeister, but I appreciate you coming on. Guys, thank you for your input, and thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We'll talk about all these major races.